Okay, so this morning, what I'm going to do is take a quick look at the pistons that we took out of the donor engine yesterday. And the plan is to try and get the piston rings off and give those a good clean. Now, I just want to show you what I've done this morning. I've put several of the pistons into a bucket of Dawn dish soap and boiling water just to get them warm. I'm actually going to be using a mixture of diluted oven cleaner to try and get the carbon deposits off and get these things cleaned up. So let me show you what we've got here in the bucket. So as I say, nice and simple, just giving them a good dunk. More than anything, it's just to get the pistons themselves and the con rods warmed up, so that the oven cleaner has a better effect. So I haven't taken any of the shell bearings off. I haven't done anything special to these. I've literally popped them into a bucket of boiling water and Dawn dish soap. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull one of these first. It doesn't matter which one. Just empty the water out. There we go, you can see it's steaming, so it's still fairly hot. And what I'm going to do is just remove these 3 piston rings, and then the goal today is to try and get these cleaned up. You can see how much accretion is on there of the carbon. So the plan is to try and get that off, and you can see just with my finger there, even with the dish soap, it's starting to come clean. So hopefully with the oven cleaner we should get those cleaned up. We'll get these con rods cleaned up as well. We'll make sure everything is clean inside, and we'll get these oiled and ready to go back onto the donor engine. So the first step is to remove the piston rings. Now these are actually really brittle, believe it or not. So the goal is to just pull it out slightly, and what we're going to try to do, they're usually pretty thin. Hopefully we can do this without pliers. I might need to grab some pliers, in fact, to do this. Let's have a look. I've got some small pliers here. Let's see if this works. Just get a better grip on it. There we go. And all I've done is just pull one of the piston rings slightly out, and I can just work my way around that now and just pop that out of the groove. There we go. So that's what our piston ring looks like. The gap between them is set so that when the piston ring is on and it's inside the cylinder, it compresses slightly and it provides a tight seal against the wall of the cylinder itself. These don't close up completely. Obviously there's a gap, and that's why we have 3. So when you go to put these back together, we want to make sure that the gaps don't align, otherwise oil will get past. So you usually offset them, and there's lots of interesting information out there on the internet about where to set them and different degrees and things. We're going to make sure when we put them together, we've got them nicely offset. They will actually move around on their own inside the cylinder, and that's okay. We just want to make sure we don't start with them all together, because that will give us low compression. So that's the first ring off. Let's do the same with these other 2. And again, we're not trying to break these. Oh, just popped into the other groove. We just want to try and remove them as best we can. We're not going to reuse them, so it doesn't matter if they do break. There we go. That's the second one. And the third one is I think this is the oil seal one. I may be mistaken. Just find the gap. There's our gap just there. And right, how are we going to get this one out? So he's in there a little bit tighter. Oop. There probably is a really neat trick to doing this. So there we go. This one's made up of 3 components. So we've got a small thin ring. Okay, and then we've got one that's a bigger ring inside. Let's see if we can get the other small ring out first. I don't know where the end to that one is, so let's just pry them up. There we go. And the end was further round, so pop that out. So that one, and then our center ring there. And again, just see if we can grab it somehow. Find where our end is. There we go. Okay, so let me just show you this one. So this is a 3-part ring. We've got this center section that is surrounded by 2 of these thinner rings, one on either side. So it's actually a 3-part piston ring. So those are now all off, which is great. We can cast those to one side. We're not going to use those again. What we're interested in is this part. So as I said before, I've got a solution here, mixed it up into an old bleach squirty bottle, and this is a standard oven cleaner. I'm going to give it a good squirt. Don't expect it to do too much straight away. And let's just give it a good clean off. This is lye based, so it's the sort of stuff, you know, when you clean your oven, it makes your eyes sting and things. So we do want to make sure we've got some hand protection on. And I'm just going to give this just a light brush with a brush here. Let's just see if we can see any difference. Give that a bit of a polish off so you can see. So not giving it a tremendous amount of pressure. This is a really soft bristle brush as well, so we're not going to damage the surface on anything. But you can see already it's starting to remove some of that, some of the carbon deposits. There we go. So yeah, you can see this is already starting to work. So I guess the thing is, and again, we are, we're going through a process of trial and error to try and get this cleaned up. I don't want to do anything too drastic to it, but at the same time, I want to make sure that we get all this carbon off and just inspect these pistons to make sure they're in good condition. Last thing we want to do is try and put the engine back together on the boat and find that we've used a piston that's either got a break in it somewhere, or one that's got some sort of damage from the donor engine. And again, the donor engine was picked up on Facebook Marketplace, and the guy assured me everything was good, and take the guy at his word, it probably is good, but we don't know. We never saw the engine running, so it's best to assume the worst and hope for the best. So let's just give this a good brush round. I'm not trying to get everything off at this stage. All I'm trying to do is get that oven cleaner worked in. As I said, I did dilute this, so it's not at its maximum strength. And I'm sure if I did leave it at maximum strength, it would probably peel this stuff off a lot quicker. But as I say, I don't want to damage anything here, so let's give this more of a squirt down. And I'm just covering the whole thing here. See how it does on these oil deposits as well. Bearing in mind that oven cleaner is made for removing grease, so it should, theoretically, as a household cleaning agent, do the job we want it to. Of course, I could go and buy some super expensive degreasers and things, but they're all based on the same core ingredient. So let's see what we can do with this. So, okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to give this another squirt down, and I think what I'll do is leave it for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll have a look. So let's give it a really good soaking in this. Not too bothered about getting it on the workbench. If anything, it's going to clean it, so it's always a bonus. Right. Okay, so let's leave that there then for a couple of minutes, and then let's see what it does when we come back to take a look. Okay, so here we are, literally 2 minutes later. I don't know if you can see, but on here it's foamed up big time, exactly as you'd see when you do your cleaning your oven at home. And just giving the toothbrush just a really gentle rub on there, that is quite impressive. Bit of a stubborn bit there, but that seems to be coming off nicely. So I'm just going to use the toothbrush to see if we can work that into the grooves where the piston rings go. Again, the goal here is to try and clear any oil residue, any gunk or anything that's been, any contaminants that are in there. Obviously we don't want that to be on our new engine. We want these as clean as possible. I'm actually really impressed with this. So again, it's a little bit of manual labor, but it's given us the chance to really get to know these pistons and make sure that we don't have any subsequent damage in there. The last thing we want to do is put, as I say, a damaged piston back into the engine we're rebuilding. We want this engine to go on for many, many, many miles. So give that a really good brush around. This toothbrush is actually getting right into these grooves. You should be able to see it there on the camera, but the bristles are actually going right in there and giving that a really good clean. So quite impressed with that. So, okay, I'm going to keep working this round, but just before I do, let's take a quick look at the con rods. So do you remember when we first looked at these, they were a really dark, oily brown. In fact, you can just see a bit in there. These are actually coming up like almost new. So very, very impressed with this. Now, obviously, we're going to be dissolving all this off. We're going to need to rinse this off and give it a really good clean. So what I'm going to do is give this another quick squirt just to get some of these harder stains to dissolve. And then I'm going to go and grab myself a bucket of clean water so that I can rinse this off. And then once this is rinsed, the plan is to give this a really good coating of oil just to make sure we don't get any surface rust or anything. We shouldn't do, but again, you know, we want to make sure it's clean, especially these areas where the bearings go. I do not want to get any rust or anything on there. That would really cause us some issues down the road. So give that another quick squirt. And there we go. A liberal squirting there. There are a few stubborn stains on there still, so let's give that chance to work its magic. Put some inside there as well. There's a bit of carbon build-up inside. Oh, God, this stuff stinks. Okay, it's just like doing your oven in the kitchen. Okay, right, there's plenty on there. So I'm going to leave that for a couple of minutes. I'm going to go and grab a bucket of water so we can give this a rinse off, and then we'll take a look at the fruits of our labour. Okay, so we'll take this over to our bucket of water, and I'm just going to give that a really good rinse around in there. You can already see how shiny that is in comparison to how it was earlier. So give that a really good rinse just to get the remnants of that caustic oven cleaner off. Just using my fingers inside there just to swizzle that round a little bit. Just make sure that water gets in. Okay, I'm going to leave that in there just for a second. I'm going to clean up the workbench so we can get that dried off. Okay, so I'm going to give this a really quick dry off with a towel. Just try and get some of this excess water off. Well, I've got to say, for oven cleaner, that has made a remarkably good job. I mean, look at the difference there. I'll bring up the two in a second so we can compare before and after. I'll grab one of the other ones and show you. And then just while I lay that out, I'm going to grab my trusty hairdryer. Now, interestingly, for a guy with no hair, I tend to use a hairdryer a heck of a lot. Okay, right, let's get this dried out completely. Okay, so I have to say I am very, very impressed with how this turned out. So this is how it looks now after we've given it that quick run through with oven cleaner. And again, it was a diluted amount. There's still a tiny bit of carbon inside this bigger ring here. This bigger ring actually opens into the inside of the piston itself to let the oil through. So I'm just going to grab one of the previous ones before we started this cleanup. So this is another one out of the box, just to give you the kind of before and after, and the amount of carbon we've got on that one compared to how we are now with this almost new looking. Yeah, look at that. You can see the difference there. It's cleaned up these con rods completely. We've got rid of all the carbon deposits that we had up here. The piston top is nice and, nice and cleaned off. I'm very happy with that. So last stage before we do anything with this is to give this a real liberal coating of oil. This is just some deep creep penetrating oil. Again, not for any particular reason other than we don't want any surface rust or anything to start to build up on this thing. So I'd rather give it a liberal coating and we can wipe off any excess and things before we refit on the boat. Now, the great news is that's one down, only 7 to go. So it took about an hour and a half to clean up the rest of the pistons, and as you can see here, I've got them laid out just to show you the difference. They almost look brand new.